Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us today. Help me welcome our speaker for today, Dr. Presha Ramsarup. Welcome, Doc. She's the director at the Wits University at the Research Center. And maybe she can speak more to that. It's always good to people have to explain themselves and what they actually do. But Prof, I would like to take this opportunity and welcome you this afternoon and greet our audience.
Thank you so much, Raymond. Hello, everybody. I'm very happy and pleased to be here this afternoon.
Thank you, Prof.
So I am, as Raymond said, I work at Wits University. I work at a research center at Wits. It's a postgraduate research center, which is called the Center for Researching Education and Labor. And it's a center that studies issues around skills development and issues around the relationship between education and the labor market.
Thank you very much for that explanation, Prof. Colleagues from wherever you are sitting around the globe, as global citizens, we welcome you. Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning. Prof, just let's get into it briefly. Tell us about your involvement in and your role in the Research Challenge.
The Research Challenge was a very exciting opportunity where myself, together with two of my colleagues from Wits, I worked with the colleague Emmanuel Ojo, as well as Nicola Jenkin. We worked with a group of 12 young researchers who came from different SADC countries. And the role that we played was we actually designed the research task. We worked with the young people. We managed the sessions. We designed the sessions. So we met online twice a week over a 6-week period. So for 6 weeks, we met online for 2-hour sessions. It was on a Monday and a Thursday. And those sessions were structured around capacity development as well as guiding them through doing research. And then my colleague Nicola actually spent time meeting one-on-one with some of the researchers. So that's the role that we played in the Research Challenge.
Thank you very much for that response, Prof. Now, tell us just a little bit about the purpose of the theme that you were assigned to lead.
Yes. So the theme that we were working with was a theme that I think is extremely important, and it's something that is very close to my own research interests and research interests that I think are important for the country. So the theme actually tried to explore the links between livelihoods, decent work, and vocational education. So it looked at what is the relationship between vocational education and how vocational education can support livelihoods in communities. So the types of skills that we are going to need to support sustainable livelihoods, and what are the potential links then to the vocational systems. And I think it's an important theme. And it was useful to add a theme like that, because it kind of talks into the transformative role of vocational education and the important and transformative space that it can play within communities in the country.
Thank you very much, Prof. We've seen UNESCO work around, and in particular TVET. Mm-hmm. Especially looking at TVET for girls. And they've launched this one program a few years ago in Malawi, 5 years ago to be precise, in Malawi, around skills for girls and getting more girls into TVET. Mm-hmm. Did your research look at those dynamics?
No, unfortunately, our research didn't explore gender issues and the kind of addressing gender issues within. So we looked more at the kind of sustainability skills and linked to that. But sustainability, gender issues play an important role in a just transition. So in a broader research study, gender mainstreaming and addressing issues of gender would certainly form part of a just transition type of study.
Thank you very much, Prof. Now, just briefly, if you could tell us about, you mentioned you worked with young researchers around from around SADC countries. If you could tell us about the research team itself and also the approach which you followed, in particular for this report.
Yeah. So, like I said, we had 12 young researchers, dynamic, vibrant researchers, very eager to want to go out there and do research during COVID-19. So, and they came from 12 12 researchers coming from 6 SADC countries. The way we approached the research and how we designed it, we first did a desktop study on vet systems in the 6 countries that were represented in our research team. So the researchers did desktop research to try to get a sense of how responsive vet institutions were in their countries and how responsive these vet institutions were in terms of engaging communities to support livelihood and enterprise development during the COVID pandemic. It was an extremely difficult task to get information on desktop. So what we then decided to do was, from that bit of desktop research, we designed mini case studies. So each researcher on the team then designed a mini case study that we guided them through. So we helped them to plan the research study, to design the study. And that's where the one-on-one meetings with my colleague Nicola actually helped them a lot, to look at their individual design. So in our sessions, we would look at, these are types of questions, this is what we want to do. So they each then identified a livelihood, a sustainable livelihood activity within their local community. And then they set up a mini case study to study that little case in context, to study the case and the context of that case, and to see what we could learn from these cases and how what was learning from there is related to the studies that the desktop work that we were doing around vet systems in their country. When we finished these mini cases and we kind of did a layers of analysis on those cases to look at what types of skills people were developing, how they were developing these enterprises, how they were working with them, we then tried to look at what opportunities were present in the vet system, in their local communities or in that regional community that could support skills development. So we had a young person in Mozambique that actually studied, one of the researchers chose a soap manufacturer who chose to manufacture soap from coconut, from the outer parts of the coconut, the waste which was being thrown away as a waste product, and he found a way to manufacture soap in his community. So we took a case study like that. We took case studies of people that were making things from recycled things. We took our informal metal workers. We took some agricultural case studies. And then people looked at, from these livelihoods that people had set up and started during the COVID pandemic, the kind of skills and expertise that we were able to trace in their case study. What are the potential skills development opportunities for them? How could we then form links into the vet system? That's the type of approach. So we got a sense of the system across the countries. We designed mini case studies, and then we went into kind of looking at, so from setting up this now, where can people transition to? Can this actually become a learning pathway for these people that set it up? Can they go somewhere? We don't want sustainable development or sustainable livelihood opportunities that are dead end. We want them to thrive and to grow and to be able to transition and create pathways out of them. So that's the approach that our team used.
Thank you very much, Prof. Prof, in your report, you mentioned, and this word, I put it in inverted commas, it's greening. There's a lot of greening happening or going on in your report. Can you tell us a bit about what does it mean and its relations to what your research is about, your TVET sector or your VET?
Yes. I think, Raymond, that VET has a very important role to play in the transition to the green and just society. And that's a just society on multiple levels: social justice, environmental justice, inequality, and all of that. So VET has always traditionally been seen to support and to be focused on productionist kind of mindsets. Actually, we need to produce skilled labor for the labor market. So I think that what this was looking at was to actually put a different purpose within the center of VET and to actually try to think about VET with a more sustainable mindset and to look at sustainability within the kind of mindset of VET. So the greening there is actually meant to bring a sustainability lens into VET.
Thank you very much, Prof.
Can I just add one more thing there? I think that, the one thing that when we spoke a lot about it with the young researchers in the team, VET systems always talk about the relationship between work and learning. They always explore the relationship between work and learning. And what we tried to do in that research team was to say that we can never talk about the relationship between work and learning without talking about living. So what we wanted to say is, what is the relationship between work, learning, and living, and actually living a more sustainable life? And I think that that's what the greening is meant to imply, is to bring the living at the center of the relationship between work and learning.
Amazing. That is super amazing, Prof. Having to personally work in this area for the last 5 years, I've seen a lot of potential in this area: skills development, occupational, qualifications and occupational trades and so forth. And this is an area where many young people, Prof, are. It's not actually their first choice because of the cognitive and the stigma around this area. Do you have something in literature that speaks to that? That how do we make TVET the first choice, or how do we make it fashionable that it is not classified as a space where all those who could not get into university get into this space?
Yes. So there are a lot of people that do that type of research, Raymond, and it's widely acknowledged, not only in South Africa, but across the world, that it's a second choice type of system. And I think that if by increasing or repurposing its role within societies, you can actually get people to start to see VET systems differently and see what comes out of VET systems differently. But I think that VET systems themselves also need to interact with communities more and to kind of form stronger relationships with the communities that they're existing, because people are used for. When we were at school, we were used to people telling us, you finish school and go to university. Communities don't know the idea of finish school and go to a TVET college, or come to grade 10 and go to a TVET college. Part of that, that image that you're talking about comes with familiarity. And it comes with then the potential, the employability and the value that people see around these institutions.
Thank you very much, Prof. Just a quick follow-up on that. Mm-hmm. What I want to ask you is that, how do we change that? Do you have some ideas around how do we, change that mindset? How do we change that perception, that stigma? What are the processes that we can put in place as the stakeholders in this area, in this sector, that can assist us in order to bring back the ideas that come into grade 10 and go to TVET college, get out of matric and go into TVET college? How can we do it?
Okay, so I think that one of one of the ways is to strengthen and to think about pathways more coherently. If people, how do many, your mother wants you to become a lawyer or a doctor or a teacher because they understand the pathway into how you're going to create a life for yourself. And I think that we are not clear about what are the pathways out of TVET College. How do those pathways, whether the pathways into some kind of entrepreneurial activity or entrepreneurship, okay, make those pathways, make the signposts for those pathways, have you ever picked up a careers guide that actually talks about careers out of TVET colleges? No, all of them talk about careers where you study science and you go to university. So the knowledge around the pathways, how people develop pathways, is actually very limited. So I'll talk to you now as an environmental researcher as well. In the environmental sector in South Africa, if you don't go to, there's almost zero knowledge about, if you don't go to university and study an environmental career where you can actually work. And that's what helps the image. It kind of, people are clear about the pathways are enabled. Unfortunately, the trajectory people have these ideas, development funding comes in, we set up a project or a program in a TVET college, but we don't think about where those people are going to transition to. So they come out of the TVET colleges and they're not able to find any kind of livelihood, whether it's work, being employed somewhere, or whether it's entrepreneurship. So that to me is actually think about, this is the TVET program. Yes, anyone in the world can fund the TVET program. But when the people walk out of there, where are the multiple pathways for them? Where can they exit to? And if they move from there, where can they move from A to B to C? That's what will help us to think about TVET as a viable pathway.
Thank you very much, Prof. Very interesting. I personally have learned so much around this, and I think what you mentioned there around that awareness and just making an example with a career guide on TVET, it's one thing that we need to start doing and implementing. Now, Prof, let's get into the findings. If you could give us some key findings that are coming out of this research around the greening.
I think that there were a couple of key things that came out for me in the study. One, and I think it was very significant to mention and highlight, is that when we were doing the desktop research, there was almost no information in all the countries in general media around the responsiveness of TVET when you compared it to basic education and higher education. So in all of the TVET in all of the SADC countries that were involved in the study, it was difficult to find what kind of TVET responses were being set up in these countries, okay? So the reporting around TVET is very limited. It comes back to how TVET is positioned by media as well, So there was a lot of reporting on higher education and a lot on basic education, okay? But almost nothing looking at the responsiveness in TVET. The other thing it was the adaptive and having the adaptive capacity. And what the case studies and what we were able to do in the case studies was to trace these elements of adaptive capacity that people have and that start to emerge during something like a crisis, okay? And having the skills to be able to adapt and what adaptive practices actually mean. The second thing is that it was interesting to see two things, that there was interest in using local resources, using local economies. Those are the things that were strengthened. Like the example that I gave you in Mozambique of the young person that started a soap business, which was extremely relevant during COVID, but using waste products from coconut, which was growing freely in Mozambique. So the kind of green entrepreneurial or the more green economy kind of based activities we picked up in almost all of the countries that were studied. So the focus on the local actually gave a renewed interest in local green economy kind of activities. In that example, of course, it was local networks, localized economies, knowing who I can get, who do I work with in these local economies and things like that. Yeah, I think that those are some of the...
I think, Prof, you mentioned quite an interesting finding when you mentioned that there were a lot of data or some in the media outlet around higher education and basic education, but nothing on TVET.
Mm-hmm.
Then, it's quite interesting. It's like what we were just discussing now around the attention that TVET is being given. Now, from the departmental perspective, because you mentioned that it was mainly from media outlets. From the departmental perspective, were there responses from these other countries around TVET?
No.
Were there responses? Were there, was it given attention to an extent where it was to an extent where education and basic education and higher education was given?
No, not at all. It was difficult to discern. And the young researchers were trying to search, obviously it was desk-based research, and some of them tried to secure interviews, but within their local communities, they couldn't even get access into the colleges that they were in to even follow up. Our first intent was to try to establish a survey. And then one of the reviewers in our research team, who luckily had experience with trying to survey TVET colleges during the pandemic, actually said it was an impossible task. We were wasting our time. We should look for another research design because we're not going to get. So information was very difficult. So even in local communities and in the kind of desktop searches, it was difficult to get access on information linked to. And we did. So I got the young people to make a list of the colleges that were in their area. They searched all the websites of all those colleges as starting points. And there was zero information on those websites. And then they went into the media, to look at what was the media reporting. So across those, what you would call like the general basic avenues of trying to get information about what is this college doing at this time? How is this college reacting and how is it responsive in its community? It was very difficult to get information.
Thank you very much, Prof. Now, we've had all of this nice methodology. We've had this, the findings, the case studies. Now, in wrapping up this research, what were your recommendations as a team?
I think I'll give you three things. I thought, it's always good to keep it to kind of three takeaway things. One, I think that everyone that we spoke to or the people that I tried to interview, they have this idea of TVET needs to use this opportunity of COVID to reinvent itself. And then I had to dissect, what does reinvent itself actually mean? Okay, so they were talking about building back better. They were talking about, how TVET will recover. And I think that there's a lot of rhetoric around the TVET recovery without a lot of deep systemic transformation. So my first recommendation is, if we're going to talk about TVET recovering after the pandemic, and talk about TVET reinventing itself, we need to look at that from a level of a deep systemic reform and transformation. Not just saying TVET is going to reinvent itself and work better in our communities post. So that's the first thing. I think that what our research showed is that there is a potential for a much stronger link between vet institutions and livelihood opportunities in communities. And that can strengthen the role of vet institutions within communities and also strengthen the kind of institutions-community relationships, okay? And I think that vet institutions are it was difficult to find, like the example that I gave you, it was difficult to find ways of how I started this business of making soap, okay? I learned these skills, I'd like to learn more skills. Where can I go to learn these skills? How can I then? And that's where TVET has a role to play to link and to strengthen these kind of community livelihood initiatives. And the second thing is, I think it was interesting to see in all of the countries when we were looking at opportunities for where people that started or these emergent livelihood opportunities, where could they go for skills development? It came back to non-formal VET providers. There was a lot of it was non-formal. And the non-formal vocational learning opportunities being provided by things like NGOs, community colleges, adult training centers in some, and their relationships and links to VET institutions are important. Because like the point that I made to you about pathways, I think that they play an important point to build and provide pathways for people. We come into communities, we start livelihood activities or entrepreneurship activities, and people go. And we're not able to actually generate or plot or signpost a pathway that people can actually follow. So those are the three things that I think I took away from this research study. If we can address those three things, we do a good job in creating a better VET system.
Thank you very much, Doc. That was actually an experience. What you mentioned there, the three things. Now I want you to, zoom in into those three things and give us one takeaway that if, ideally, if we were to get out of here and someone was to say, give us this one takeaway to implement from this research, which one would it be?
Do you want a logical answer or a heartfelt answer? My heartfelt response would be, we need a deep systemic change to transform TVET. But that is so long term. My short-term workable answer is probably going to be to look at the non-formal VET opportunity and learning opportunities related to our public VET institutions and see how we can strengthen them so we strengthen community VET institution relationships. That's a short-term, easily implemented thing. But if you made me Minister of Higher Education, I probably would go with systemic reform.
That is super understandable, Doc. Well, thank you very much. I think you have given us enough, and I'm sure our audience out there, they are also appreciative of the facts that you have given us, and also the insight that has come out from this report. I would just like to inform our audience that the report will be on live on our JET website. It can be accessed on www.jet.org.za. If you want to read the full report, it will be accessed there. And thank you very much for joining us from wherever you are joining us. And I would just like to give Prof just a few seconds to also say goodbyes and thank the audience out there.
Yeah, so as a parting note, I would just like firstly to thank all the young people. I mean, hopefully I'm not going to leave anyone out, but Lebogang from Botswana, Orchidea from Mozambique, there was Nicola, there was Umar from Nigeria, there was Katlego from South Africa, Vincent from Eswatini, Tarasai from Zimbabwe, Lazarus from Zambia, Dio from Mozambique, Emmanuel, who is my colleague at WITS and who helped me a lot, May Bongwe from Zimbabwe, and Taiba from South Africa. So I think a big, huge accolade to all of these young researchers. I think they did an incredible job under very difficult circumstances, they were able to conduct research when people were in lockdown. And I think that they conducted research that has actually taught us some lessons and helped us to build some kind of argument. So I think a big shout out to them. And then, of course, a big thank you to UNESCO, JET, and all the other partners that put this opportunity together. I thought it was an innovative and incredible learning opportunity for myself, I know for my colleagues, and for all the young people involved. So thanks very much. And I enjoyed being part of it.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thanks a lot. And our audience, until we meet again, when we launch another report, this is us from JET Education Services. Peace. Goodbye.
Bye, Raymond.